The fighter vanished in a heartbeat, one moment screaming through the sky, the next swallowed whole by cloud, forest and silence. June 18, 1944. The war was barely 2 weeks past D-Day, and the air over occupied Europe felt electrically alive, charged with death and possibility in equal measure. Engines roared above shattered countryside. Radios crackled with clipped voices. Every pilot knew the odds had shifted, but not enough to make anyone feel safe. Second Lieutenant Eleanor "Ellie" Ward tightened her gloved hand around the control stick of her P-51 Mustang as it sliced through thin bands of cloud. The aircraft trembled, not fear but speed. She'd learned the difference long ago. Below her stretched a quilt of dark green forest, rivers like veins, villages reduced to dull scars. Somewhere down there were German flak batteries, rail yards, and men with rifles who would happily trade their lives for hers. Somewhere up here were Messerschmitts looking for the same thing. Ellie exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She wasn't supposed to be here. Officially, women didn't fly combat missions in 1944. Not in the U.S. Army Air Forces. Women ferried planes, tested them, trained men who would then go off to fight and die. That was the rule. But wars have a way of bending rules until they break. Ellie Ward was a rule already broken. Her presence over Europe was the result of desperation, bureaucracy, and one colonel who believed talent mattered more than optics. She had been quietly reassigned, buried under layers of paperwork, flying missions that would never bear her name. No photographs, no press, no medals. If she went down, she would simply vanish. And now, as her fuel gauge dipped lower than she liked and her radio hissed with static, that possibility no longer felt theoretical. "Red Flight, this is Red 2, came a voice through her headset. "I'm losing you, Ellie. Say again you're heading." Ellie leaned closer to the mic. "I'm still on course. North-northeast. Escorting the last bomber back. I'll rejoin in." The sentence died as her cockpit exploded with sound. Flak. Black bursts flowered in the sky around her, sudden and violent. The Mustang jolted hard to the left. Warning lights flashed. The engine coughed once, twice, then screamed in protest. Ellie's heart slammed against her ribs. Red 2 hit. Someone shouted over the radio. She wrestled the controls, forcing the plane level. Smoke curled past the canopy, acrid and choking. Instruments danced wildly. The engine temperature needle spiked into the red. "Ellie, pull up." Another voice yelled. "You're bleeding fuel." She already knew. She could feel it. The plane felt lighter, wrong, like an animal running on borrowed strength. She scanned the sky. No fighters in sight. The bomber formation was already limping west, toward friendly airspace. If she stayed, she'd slow them down. If she turned back alone, Ellie made the decision in a fraction of a second. "I'm breaking off," she said, calm despite the fire chewing at her engine. Trying to set her down, there was a pause. Too long. "Say again?" Red 2 asked. Ellie didn't repeat herself. She rolled the Mustang east, toward the forest she'd been watching for the last 10 minutes. It rose like a dark sea beneath her, endless and unforgiving. No fields, no roads, just trees. The engine sputtered again, then lost power altogether. Silence flooded the cockpit, an unnatural, terrifying quiet broken only by the rush of air. Ellie swallowed. She reached for the canopy release, hesitated, then stopped. Too low, too fast. The forest was coming up at her with brutal speed. Bailing out now would drop her straight into the trees or worse. She tightened her grip on the stick and whispered, "Easy, girl, easy." The Mustang clipped the treetops. Branches shattered against metal. The plane screamed as if alive. Ellie's head snapped forward. The world became a blur of green and shadow and pain. Then nothing. When Ellie Ward failed to return from the mission, the paperwork was sparse. 1 page. Typed. No photograph attached. Missing in action. Presumed lost over enemy territory. No one came to claim her locker. Her flight log disappeared into a filing cabinet. Her name never appeared in newspapers or victory lists. The war moved on. So did the world. The forest where she went down reclaimed itself with quiet efficiency. Rain softened the soil. Moss crept over twisted aluminum. Saplings grew through bent wings. Seasons stacked on seasons until memory itself seemed to rot away. By 1945, the war was over. By 1950, Ellie Ward was officially declared dead. And by the time 70 years passed, no one alive remembered that a woman had ever flown alone into that stretch of sky and never come back. No one, that is, except the forest. The first man to sense something wrong was Tomasz Kowalczyk, and he didn't even know what he was looking at. It was October 2014 when he noticed the metal. Tomasz had walked these woods in southern Poland since he was a boy. His father had. His grandfather had too. Hunters, mushroom pickers, quiet men who respected the forest's moods. You learned when to listen. When to leave. That morning mist clung low to the ground, wrapping the trees in pale ghost light. Tomasz was tracking deer sign when his boot struck something solid. Metal didn't belong here. He crouched, brushing away leaves. At first he thought it was old farming equipment. War junk was common in these parts. Rusted helmets, spent casings, sometimes even bones. But this was different. Smooth, curved, painted. He wiped again, faster now. A star emerged beneath the grime. White, perfectly preserved. Tomasz's breath caught. He stepped back, suddenly aware of how quiet the forest had become. It took 3 days before authorities arrived. 3 days of speculation, hushed excitement, and disbelief. When archaeologists and military historians finally began excavating the site, what they uncovered defied every expectation. An aircraft lay embedded in the earth, its fuselage cracked but largely intact, wings snapped yet recognizable. The cockpit sealed, canopy fractured but never opened, a P-51 Mustang American, alone. There were no parachutes, no remains nearby, no signs of scavenging or recovery, just the plane. Abandoned. As if its pilot had landed, climbed out and walked away. The discovery sent ripples through academic circles and military archives alike. Records were pulled, maps redrawn, mission logs compared. One question echoed again and again: where was the pilot? The aircraft's serial number was partially visible, miraculously spared by soil and shade. Enough to trace its origin. Enough to confirm the date. June 18, 1944. One pilot missing. Second Lieutenant Eleanor Ward. A woman whose existence in combat records should not have been possible. A woman officially dead for 70 years, and yet the forest told a different story. The plane had not burned. The cockpit showed signs of a controlled crash landing. And the canopy, though damaged, had been opened from the inside. Ellie Ward had survived the impact, which meant that sometime after she vanished from the sky, she stood alone in enemy territory, wounded, exhausted, and completely erased from history. And whatever happened next, the world had never been meant to know that Ellie Ward woke to the sound of dripping water and the taste of blood. For a long moment, she did not understand where she was. Her body ached in unfamiliar ways, deep, spreading pain that felt structural, as if her bones themselves were bruised. The air was damp and cold, heavy with pine resin and soil. When she tried to move, agony surged up her left side and stole her breath. She gasped, and the memory came crashing back. The flak. The engine dying. The trees rushing up like a wall. Ellie forced her eyes open. She lay half reclined against a tree trunk, moss pressing into her flight jacket. Her helmet was gone. Her hair, once tightly bound, clung damply to her face. She looked down at herself with slow, careful movements. Her right leg was pinned beneath a twisted section of aluminum. The Mustang's wing, or part of it, had torn free and wrapped around her like a cruel brace. Blood soaked the fabric near her thigh, dark and sticky. She was alive. That realization brought relief, then terror, because if she was alive, she was also alone. Ellie reached weakly toward her leg, gritting her teeth as she tried to lift the metal. It didn't budge. Panic flickered at the edges of her thoughts, sharp and dangerous. Panic killed pilots. She forced it down, breathing shallowly. Think, assess, act. Her training kicked in. She checked herself piece by piece. Concussion likely. Broken ribs. The leg, she didn't know yet. She could still feel it, which was something. Her sidearm was still holstered. Her emergency kit hung from her belt, miraculously intact. The forest around her was silent, too silent. No voices, no engines, no dogs. If German patrols had seen her go down, they would already be here. That meant either luck or delay. Ellie dug her fingers into the dirt and pulled. Pain fled white hot, but the metal shifted. She screamed despite herself. A raw, animal sound swallowed instantly by the trees. Again. With one final wrench, the wing gave way. Ellie collapsed sideways, sobbing as she dragged her leg free. She crawled on her elbows until her back hit another tree, then slumped, shaking. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Eventually, she forced herself to stand. Her left leg buckled immediately. She bit down on her sleeve to keep from crying out. The bone was cracked, maybe broken, but she could put weight on it, barely. The Mustang lay behind her like a dead animal, broken and quiet. Smoke no longer rose from it. The fire had never come. Ellie stared at it for a long time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she turned away. She knew the rules. Move away from the crash site, hide, survive. The forest closed around her as she limped forward. Each step a victory paid for in blood. By nightfall, she had found a shallow depression beneath a fallen tree. She cleaned her wounds as best she could, hands shaking with exhaustion. She ate half a ration bar and saved the rest. She listened. Owls called. Branches creaked. Something moved in the undergrowth, dear, she hoped. As darkness deepened, the weight of reality settled on her chest. She was a woman pilot in enemy territory. Officially, she did not exist. If captured, she would not be protected. Ellie closed her eyes and pictured the stars above the clouds, the feel of the Mustang at full throttle, the freedom of the sky. She wondered if she would ever see it again. Ellie learned quickly how thin the line between survival and death truly was. The forest offered food, berries, roots, small animals, but it demanded patience and pain in return. Every step tore at her injured leg. Infection lurked in every scratch. Rain soaked her clothes. Cold gnawed at her bones. She followed streams to stay hidden. Avoided roads. Learned the rhythms of patrols by listening rather than seeing. On the fourth day, she heard German voices. Ellie froze, pressing herself into the mud as boots passed less than 20 yards away. She held her breath until her lungs burned. They never looked her way. That night, fever took her. She drifted in and out of consciousness, haunted by memories and half-dreams. Her mother's kitchen, the first time she'd flown solo. The colonel's voice, low and careful, when he told her the mission would never be acknowledged. "You're good enough," he'd said. But history may not be ready. History, she thought bitterly, had forgotten her fast enough. She woke to hands on her shoulders. Ellie screamed and swung her pistol blindly. "Stop. Please stop." The voice was female, young, panicked. Ellie's vision cleared to reveal a girl barely out of her teens, eyes wide with terror. Another figure stood behind her, older male, holding a hunting rifle but not aiming it. They were civilians, Polish. The girl spoke again, softly this time. "You are hurt. Please." Ellie lowered the gun slowly. Trust was dangerous, but dying alone was worse. They hid her in a cellar beneath a ruined farmhouse, cleaned her wounds, fed her soup that tasted like heaven, told her their names, Anya and Marek Nowak. They never asked why an American woman wore a flight jacket. They already knew enough. Days turned into weeks. Ellie healed slowly, pain becoming a constant companion. She learned fragments of their language, learned that resistance fighters passed through sometimes, that the war was closing in on itself like a fist. But she also learned something else. The Germans were asking questions. A downed American aircraft had been reported. No body found. Patrols increased. Rewards offered. Ellie became a liability. One night, Marek sat across from her, face grave. "You must leave," he said gently. Soon, Ellie nodded. She had known it was coming. Before dawn, Ania pressed a small wooden cross into her hand. "For luck," she whispered. Ellie hugged her fiercely. Then she vanished into the forest again. Ellie never made it to friendly lines. She learned later, much later, that Allied forces had shifted routes, that contacts she'd been told to find were gone or dead, that the war's front had moved faster than any single person could follow. She survived anyway. She took another name, another life, Elżbieta Warda, a farmhand, a widow, a woman who spoke little and worked hard. Years passed. The war ended. Liberation came with cheers and tears and bodies in the streets. Ellie watched from the edges, joy tangled with grief she couldn't share. She could not go home. Her existence had no paper trail, no discharge, no proof. And so she stayed. She married no one, trusted few. She lived quietly, teaching children to read, helping rebuild what war had torn apart. Sometimes at night, she dreamed of flying. By the way, if you're clinging to this moment with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More awaits just ahead. Ellie grew old beneath foreign skies, and when she finally died decades later, she left behind only a box of relics, a faded flight pin, a cracked compass, and a photograph of a young woman beside a Mustang. No one knew what it meant. The excavation of the Mustang rewrote everything. Historians argued. Documents were reclassified. The idea of a female combat pilot in 1944 sparked controversy and awe, but the plane did not lie, nor did the soil. Footprints, medical remnants, signs of prolonged survival. The forest had kept her secret, but not forever. A graduate student named Klara Zielinski discovered the Nowak family records. Letters, testimonies, a name that almost matched. Zielinski Warda, Ellie. The realization hit like thunder. She had lived. The truth emerged slowly, painfully. Ceremonies were held. Flags raised. Apology issued too late. Ellie Ward was posthumously reinstated, her name carved into stone. Veterans wept. Young girls listened. The Mustang was restored not to fly, but to remember. On a quiet day in spring, a flyover passed above the forest. 3 Mustangs, silver and proud. As engines thundered overhead, the trees swayed gently. Some swore the wind changed. Some swore they felt her there. Ellie Ward, fighter pilot, survivor, ghost of the forest, had finally come home.